Don't forget, you can find out more about the show on Twitter at Inside Out South. Next, news travels fast these days. The touch of a screen or the click of the mouse, you can find out what's happening instantly just about anywhere. But what about the old-fashioned local newspaper? Does technology mean it's yesterday's news? Jeremy Stern reports.
Reading. It's already the biggest town in the UK. The station's been transformed, Crossrail's on the way. More than 150,000 people live in Reading Borough, and with more investment planned, more people are moving in. So you might think that with so much going on in a town, the local paper would be cashing in. But far from it. Sales of a daily Reading Post have been on the slide for years. The print edition's now been scrapped.
There's an enormous crisis going on in local and regional newspapers at the moment. That's only deepened in the last year or so. We've seen waves of redundancies take place. We've seen editions being lost, and we've seen newspapers fold entirely.
A quarter of local government areas are not covered by a daily local newspaper, including Reading Borough. But there is still a weekly paper. This is the Reading Chronicle. They've just moved to these new offices in the centre of town. Now, the paper's been around since 1825 and they sell about 8,000 copies a week. Editor Leslie Potter says her paper is more relevant now than ever.
We've forgotten the importance of the press in terms of democracy. Justice doesn't just have to be done, it has to be seen to be done. And if you haven't got professionals out there in the courts and in the council taking proper notes and writing accurate reports about things, they can go off and do what the hell they like.
This is the newsroom where all the journalists are, and they've just started their morning meeting.
What's the latest on the Heights School in Caversham? Well, people are really not happy down there. I've had a few phone calls this week, so I was thinking of going up there and talking to people.
Yeah.
With primary school places scarce, the park in Albert Road's been put forward as a possible site for a new school. Not everyone's happy about it.
Why is the park so instrumental in this part of the Caversham community?
It's a fantastic amenity. It's probably the most used space per square metre in Reading as a park.
And how would a school affect you though?
Sarah's been digging out stories in Reading for 20 years.
You get a real buzz from finding out things fast and making sure you get putting it all together and having a fantastic article at the end of the day.
Sometimes local stories go global. Last year, Sarah heard through the grapevine that a Hollywood star was house hunting in Berkshire.
I knew there were rumours of George Clooney coming to Sonning, so I went down and spoke to people at the school gates who'd actually knew he was there. I went to the pub in the village and I just went and spoke to people and managed to get one of the best and the first article out there about George actually coming to Sonning.
From Sonning to Sunderland, the UK's covered by 1,100 regional newspapers, but about 30 are disappearing every year. Sir John Medeski worked as a sales rep at the Reading Evening Post before making his fortune in print. He says it's now more difficult to make money.
There's so many different places to advertise. So you've got local radio stations, you've got the net, you've got national papers and television, and so there's a lot of competition. And it's very difficult for newspapers to survive in this day and age because of the internet, largely speaking.
The Reading Post still exists, but only online. Its owners, Trinity Mirror, are convinced this is the way forward, but the website's run with far fewer staff. The National Union of Journalists says it's cost-cutting.
It's the journalism that's really important. It's brilliant to have lots of different ways for journalists to get their content across, but to be able to do it properly, you actually need better resources, not fewer.
The union wants a government inquiry, but this man says the people who run papers need to help themselves. Sir Ray Tyndall loves his classic cars almost as much as he enjoys local news. His company, Tyndall Newspapers, based in Farnham, publishes more than 200 titles. Sir Ray's recovering from throat surgery, but he's as passionate about the press as ever.
The local paper will always be wanted. We produce every week news, but no other medium. It's down to,
When we look around at all these titles all over the south, well, what do you think you've added to these places where there are local papers that are doing well?
Well, mainly the papers that we have are the only papers in those towns.
Sales may be down, but Sir Ray says local papers will always have their place.
Very few people can expect to get into a national paper, but they can get into the local paper. We publish that. You can't get it in that detail anywhere else.
As well as the Reading Post, 6 other print editions in Berkshire and Surrey have also disappeared. But in Wokingham, not everyone's given up on local news.
Read all about it. It's a new paper for the borough. Local news for local people. The Wokingham paper. Read all about it. Come and get your copy now.
Businessman Richard McCall and journalist Phil Crichton want to fill the gap left by the Wokingham and Bracknell Times.
Well, I'm really excited to tell you that as of Easter we're going to be launching the Wokingham paper. It's going to be a paper about Wokingham people. It's going to be based in Wokingham.
What do you think then?
I think it's brilliant. I think we should have a Wokingham paper, and always should have had a Wokingham paper. I don't know why it stopped.
You get the newspaper through each week. It's lovely. Sit down with a cup of tea, read that, see what's happening in the local area. Have a look for some of your friends and see who's doing what. It's really good, vital, I think.
It looks like you've got some support there, Phil, already.
It's incredible the support that we've had. People in Wokingham really miss their newspaper, so to actually give them something back, I can't wait.
What makes you think your paper can succeed where others have failed?
It's really important that a newspaper actually represents the community that it serves. So we're going to be based in the town and we're going to make sure we keep talking to people. I joke that I want our journalists to wear out their shoes because they're actually walking the streets.
But Phil's enthusiasm didn't rub off on everyone.
Would you like to hear all about the new Wokingham paper, our new newspaper for the borough?
If there was a good local paper, would you buy it?
I think I will, yes.
You didn't buy the last one?
A couple.
We're literally on our phones most of the day. It's ridiculous how often we're on the phone, and I can just do it that way. It's too accessible online for me to go and spend money to read it on a paper form.
But for Sir John Medeski, there's something about flicking through a newspaper.
But it is a friend dropping in. And you browse, just sort of pick up stories.
But that's what people want, though, isn't it?
Well, I still think they do, actually. But it's economically not viable. That's the bottom line. Economically not viable.
Support your local newspaper. Read all about it.
Isn't it the case that local papers have just gone out of fashion and people just don't want to read them anymore?
It's not true. In the areas where quality news is taking place and is being served up to readers, they're still buying it. So it's not outdated. There's absolutely an appetite for decent quality local news.
Thank you very much.
Papers can actually affect change if there's enough people moaning about something. And if we weren't here, who's going to do that for them?